Okay, political parties and interest groups. Two of the chapters that we had in the back half of the class this time, one of them is dealing with political parties and one of them is dealing with interest groups. And both of them, believe it or not, do some of the exact same things. Having said this, they do some of the exact same things for completely different reasons. Now, when you think about political parties, we're talking about the Republicans, we're talking about the Democrats. You could go to the Libertarians. Maybe even these Tea Partiers are going to turn into something that's going to be lasting. We'll see if that's something that works. But political parties basically focus on doing two things. They focus on aggregation and articulation. Aggregation, what does that mean? Aggregation means that basically political parties are going to come out and they are going to make statements of policy. They are going, or pardon me, aggregation, articulation. What is it that articulation means? Articulation means they're going to make statements of policy. So you're going to know exactly what it is that their beliefs are. When you think back to the belief quiz that we had earlier in the semester, Republicans or conservatives typically believed in regulating the moral issues in society, but they also typically believed in staying out of the economic or the wallet decisions. So when you put this into context, the Republicans typically are pro-life, meaning they're against abortion. Republicans, when you think about it, are going to be a little bit easier on the environment. Because when you think about it, environmental costs, environmental cleanups will drive up the prices for being able to do business. Republicans are also going to be maybe in favor of business benefits. So if you have the resources to be able to create a business, we are going to give you tax breaks as Republicans, or at least that's going to be our goal when you think about it, because if we give you tax breaks, that's going to give you the incentive to go and actually create those jobs, invest that money. Articulation is a key point. Same thing with the Democrats, it just would be in the other direction. The Democrats are maybe going to believe more in social freedoms as opposed to economic freedoms. Gay marriage or gay in the military. These would be types of policies that the Democrats or the liberals are going to focus on a little bit more. Again, this is more of a social freedom. When you think about economics, they're going to believe in taxing more based on how much you earn, rather than taxing everybody the same thing. The more you earn, the higher the tax that you should pay. Because if everybody is paying 10%, 10% tax to somebody that's making $10,000 is not going to be the same as 10% tax of somebody that is paying 100 or earning 100,000. Why? Because the person making 100,000 is going to have a lot more disposable income. 10,000 is going to be a smaller fraction. They would argue they should be paid more. The reason that I give you this, articulation. Political parties are basically going to put it together so that they articulate these beliefs. They're going to put together platforms. Now, here's the trick on this. Political parties are also going to attempt to aggregate the voters, meaning they're going to articulate policy positions and they're going to aggregate the voters. The gist of it is that if you're clear with your policy positions, you're going to be able to ultimately put together larger and larger groups of voters. Now, when you think about a typical election, in the United States, the majority party, believe it or not, the majority party in the United States are the Democrats. The Democrats are probably going to compose about 35% of the electorate on one side. Now, I say majority party. The Democrats are not a 50% plus one party, but they are the largest party that's actually out there. The Republicans, on the other hand, again, depending upon the time frame, are going to be roughly in that same range, maybe a little bit closer to 30%. So when you put this into context, the Democrats by themselves are typically not going to be able to win elections. The Republicans by themselves are typically not going to be able to win elections. The key really is going to be this 35% that's in the center. And this 35% that's in the center here is really the group that determines the elections. So when I say that you're aggregating, you're not just going to be aggregating, if you will, these people that are going to be within their own parties, but you're going to be attempting to pull as many of these people from the center to your side as possible. So it's really going to be these folks that are right in here that are going to be the ones that are going to be determining the elections. Here's another kicker on this. Political parties' number one function is not necessarily to change the government. Political parties' number one function is to rule, to rule. So when you think about this, or you put this into context, political parties are interested in winning elections. If they pass laws, maybe that's a good thing. Maybe that's not. But as long as the political party stays in charge, they can continue to control the rules of the game. So political parties, number one, are going to articulate beliefs very clearly in most instances. Number two, they're going to attempt to aggregate voters. They're going to attempt to aggregate their base, the 30%, but more importantly, or the 35%, but they're more importantly going to try and pull people from the center to their side so that at that point right there, they're going to be able to get enough people to win the election, because these undecideds, if you will, that are in the center are the ones that are going to be really the difference makers in the typical election. The other piece about this is political parties are interested in winning elections. And as long as they're winning elections, they're happy, even if they don't pass laws. Now, interest groups are a little bit different. What is an interest group? When you think about it, interest groups do basically the same thing. Number one, they are going to articulate beliefs. They're going to articulate more specialized beliefs, though. So when you think about it, the NAACP would be a group that might be more interested in racial harmony. The NRA might be a group that's more interested in gun rights. When you think about now, this could be a gender-based organization, and we could go on and on and on. The gist of it is that whereas political parties are attempting to aggregate and articulate for large numbers of people, interest groups are going to be looking to aggregate and articulate more specialized interests. That's the first piece to this. So they're doing the same thing, they're just doing it for far fewer people. The other part about this, interest groups typically have a negative connotation, and maybe they have earned it. I used to be a lobbyist in North Carolina. I used to lobby for the North Carolina Contract Poultry Growers Association. I used to lobby for the chicken farmers, and they called me the Colonel back in those days. And I'm not making this up. The gist of it is that we would go in and we would lobby to attempt to get laws passed that would benefit the contract poultry growers. And if you've ever seen chicken houses in North Carolina, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Believe it or not, there's an awful lot of money that's involved, whether you're talking about the purchasing and upkeep of those houses, or whether you're talking about the flocks of birds that you're going to be raising and then ultimately selling to the chicken companies. Our job was basically to deal with that specific, narrow piece of North Carolina's population. We articulated and we aggregated for them. Now, having said all this, we're not interested as interest groups in winning elections. We're interested in affecting policy. And this is really the difference between political parties and interest groups. A successful political party is going to be one that wins elections, one that maintains power. The Democrats have the presidency right now. The Democrats have the United States Senate right now. The Republicans have the United States House. The Republicans have the courts, which means that technically speaking, considering the courts aren't elected, the Democrats have probably done a little bit better of a job in terms of winning elections. But are they the better party right now? Have they really passed laws? Are you certain that Obama is going to get reelected in about a year and a half? I think the answer to all of those questions are no, no, and no. We're not certain. Interest groups, on the other hand, in order to be successful, don't necessarily care about elections. What interest groups are going to be interested in doing are going to be affecting policy. Because you know what? If somebody, there's an election that happens, if it's one time the Republicans, if it's another time the Democrats, the government is going to change somewhat, but not necessarily that much. If we, as an interest group, get a law passed, well, now we've got something that's going to be in the books, regardless of whether it's Republicans or Democrats. So we're representing people in a very specialized sense, and our ability or success is not based on winning elections or controlling the government. Interest groups don't want to do that, but they want to influence the government to deal with their specific constituency. Now, in fairness, can interest groups influence elections? Yes. If there is a real jerk that is too conservative or too liberal and is really stepping on what it is that we want to do, an interest group will throw money into that election on the other side to attempt to get that person defeated. But interest groups don't run candidates. Political parties run candidates. Interest groups support candidates that support them, and that's a very, very significant difference. Whenever you're ready.